This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hello, welcome to Undistracted. I'm your host, Laura Bennett, and this is the podcast where we learn from our guests how to be better at building our lives with intention around our passions, our purpose, and deal with some of the stuff that gets in the way of that. You can subscribe wherever you're listening. You can also watch video versions of many of these chats on the Hope 1032 YouTube channel. What is that pain you carry that nobody else knows about? Whether it's a personal concern, a health diagnosis, a loss you're still grieving, there are so many times and so many things we can be facing that nobody else knows. For those who experience it, infertility can be extremely lonely and isolating. It's an invisible pain. You might not want to talk about it for fear of judgment or shame, or simply because it is just too personal a subject. Sheridan Voysey is a writer, speaker, and broadcaster on faith and spirituality. After being told he and his wife Merryn couldn't conceive, the couple spent nearly a decade trying to have children by other means, but eventually chose to end their quest. In the years since, Sheridan has encouraged thousands around the world with his story, recently compiling a 90-day devotional called Praying Through Infertility for those needing some peace, some encouragement on their own journey. And in this conversation, he speaks about how he and his wife Merryn have found a pathway through. Let's welcome Sheridan to the show.
Laura, it's nice to be in the same room together, right? The last few conversations we've had have been, distance, me in the UK, you here, and it's just wonderful to be together again.
Yeah, sharing space face to face and going into a subject that many may remember. You originally wrote a book over 10 years ago now, Resurrection Year, sharing your story and your wife Merryn's story, your journey with infertility. You then wrote The Making of Us, talking a bit about what happened on the other side of that. To come back into the story of infertility, that journey, why did you want to be talking about this subject again?
I didn't want to do it again. So the publishers, Thomas Nelson, who are a wonderful group of publishing professionals, this wonderful lady named Stephanie Newton, who actually was the publicist on Resurrection Year all those years ago, has now made her way up to assistant publisher. And she said, look, we've had this really helpful, successful book called Praying Through Cancer, and we want to do a whole series of those to help people in other areas of life going through their difficult times. And I really would like you to do one on praying through infertility. I had another project on the go on adult friendship. I felt that I'd done as much as I needed to do. We'd gone very public about our story in Resurrection Year, and then there'd been documentaries made and lots of speaking and just sharing so much on what is a very personal story. I kind of thought, you know what? I wonder whether I've done my bit there. And then Stephanie came to me and she said, look, you could write it. You and Merryn could write it together. Maybe it could be other people that could contribute to it as well. And at first I thought, I'm not too sure this is my gig to do. And then I went away and I prayed about it and I realized, you know what? Resurrection Year had put me in touch with a group of people all around the world who had some amazing stories and lessons to share. And if I was to coach some of them had never written before, some of them had, some of them hadn't. If I was to coach the ones who needed a bit of encouragement, you know what, that could be something. And it just felt like a call to do. And so that's what it's turned out to be. 37 contributors from 10 different countries, a variety of different ethnic backgrounds, which all brings an incredible nuance into this very, very fraught area of infertility, which has brought a richness and a depth and a power that I never could have done myself.
And is part of the reason why you didn't want to do this book because you, in part, wanted to let this journey go? You've had the really personal hardship of it. You've then spoken publicly. Like, is there a point that you get to where you just want to say, this is no longer what I want to talk about and be defined by in some respect?
Yeah, it's almost going back to 10 years ago when it's just like Adrian Plass, the author, originally suggested to me that I write the book Resurrection Year. And it's just like, I don't want to go public about that story. I've got other things that I want to do. And yet it turned out to be a real call from God through him to do that. And it's helped so many people that it's almost like I've returned to those feelings and said, I'm not too sure I want to do that anymore. And actually there's a call there to do it. It's one of those things where, there are some things that we don't necessarily jump at emotionally that we want to do. And then you do it and then you see it help so many people and you go, this is good. this is good.
Is there still as much sting in thinking back on that time when you're in the doctor's room being told, you don't have the sperm count to potentially have a baby? Like, is there still as much sting in that memory as in the original day itself for you now?
Very good question. If I'm to go back to those moments, there is a sense in which I don't want to go back to them for too long, but at the same time I can talk about them for hours on end because we've kind of dealt with it. We've done the grieving necessary to be able to then have it as a past thing, not a present thing. That's actually really, really important. I do speak to couples who they said, about 4 or 5 years ago, we said, maybe we'll just be a couple. We're not going to, keep on trying, quote unquote, for a child, but we just find we can't move on. And then I ask, well, was there ever a line in the sand, either metaphorically or indeed some people have taken me literally on this and actually gone down to the beach, drawn a line on the sand and have prayed on one side of that line, and then they've stepped over that line together and said, we're leaving our old life behind, we're moving into our new one. Has there ever been a line in the sand or something where you've kind of officially marked the end of this journey? You have brought this dream to an end. You've laid it in a grave, so to speak, so that you can then grieve and then move on. And that's when you find out, no, they've never done something like that. And so they have never been able to move on. Really, really key. You've got to actually have a funeral before you can grieve to then move on to the new life that you have for you ahead of you. We've done all that. So there's a sense in which when I'm able to speak in front of an audience about this, still to this day, I can do that because it's not raw and alive. That would be very difficult to be able to bring the lessons and the things that you can share with other people if it was still triggering you all the time. It doesn't trigger us anymore.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't be healthy to be there raw on stage like that, sharing this kind of stuff. But you have built such a beautiful tribe of community around you in this journey. And there's this really powerful line in the opening passages of the book where you say that yourself and the other contributors, that God has recycled our wilderness experiences into redemptive help for each other. That line hit me so much, and I think there's such beauty in that. Can you expand on what that recycling process has looked like?
So you've got your own experience. And for us, that was a climactic moment on Christmas Eve 2010. We'd been told on our very last embryo transferred that we were pregnant. And then on Christmas Eve, we had a phone call saying that we weren't. They got it wrong. And everything just collapsed. And so we had driven back to Sydney. We were in Brisbane at the time celebrating Christmas with our family. We that night, Christmas Eve, started driving our way 13 hours back to Sydney where we lived at the time. And went to ground, licked our wounds, started to then think and dream a little bit over the next 2 weeks as to where we go from here. Once you're able to start again, then you can start to recycle some of those lessons that you've learnt during that time. That's an intentional process, and some people just don't want to go there. Fully understand that. I think for me, there's a calling to always try and, can you mine your life for the things that God's teaching you? Can you mine your experience? Can you pull out of that little event there with that person, that conversation, that experience you've gone through, that dark time you've gone through, something in which other people are going to be able to benefit from this? That's where the redemption happens. When you prayerfully walk through that experience, when you prayerfully journal the lessons that you've learned, the things that you wouldn't do again, the things that you might be able to pass on to others, that is gold. That is gold. And when you can do that, it doesn't have to be infertility. It might be unwanted singleness. It might be losing a career. It might be not having a career that you've always wanted. When you can mine those experiences, you may find that you are standing on gold. You're so often looking to the hills thinking there's going to be diamonds over there, I need to go up there. Actually, you're standing on gold. And if you could just mine it, gosh, you've got some really wonderful treasures to share with other people.
What has it meant to you to find a tribe of other people that have similar experiences, that have journeyed through infertility? What has that meant to you to find a tribe of people that can be with you in this and that you can be with as well?
So there's two ways to find a tribe. One is empathy can connect us to people who we don't have anywhere near the same kind of experiences. So I don't want to suggest that you can only find tribes within people who have only experienced the exact same thing as you have. Empathy is a wonderful thing to build us together, even if we've not gone through the same experiences. But in this area, infertility is a silent pain. You don't walk around the office saying, "Oh, just by the way, my husband and I can't conceive, my wife and I aren't conceive." You just don't do that. You don't share that. So it's a very silent pain. No doubt, for our friend listening, there's probably somebody in your life right now who is wrestling with this. They may not have told you. Might be a family member, a friend, a neighbor, but they are. But it's a hidden pain, and so this is a hidden tribe. So when one of those tribal members gets the gumption up to be able to share to somebody else that this is what they're going through, and it so happens that that person is going through that as well, you go, "You too?
Yeah.
I thought it was just me." And that's when you find this camaraderie for this experience that is so secret, so hidden. For some people is completely shrouded with shame, even though it doesn't need to, but it's completely shrouded with shame. And you find yourself with a comrade sitting next to you. That happened to me. I was walking down the street one day, fairly early into our journey, and a friend was sitting at a pub with other friends, invited me to come and join their table, and I got to meet some of these other people. I don't know how, Laura, we ended up talking about the topic.
Because how do you talk about infertility at a pub? Like, it doesn't necessarily seem very natural.
That's right, unless there's been a few pints, but there hadn't been a few pints conceived that day. We hadn't consumed very much at all. But anyway, I got talking to this guy next to me, and somehow, I don't know how, but we got onto the topic, and he said, "Well, that's my wife and me. We've had 2 children now through IVF, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff to go through, and if you like, I can take your number and we can talk those things through." And Laura, it was just like, this is the first time I'd ever met somebody who's going through this, and there was just this relief. Somebody's a little bit ahead of me on the road, and maybe can let me know where the potholes are so I can sidestep them.
And is that journey, the friendships in a way, the companionship that you found, has that kind of fed into some of the work that you do now with the Friendship Lab and focusing on the importance of adult friendship especially? It's
definitely fed into that. So there's been a whole heap of feedback that's come from Resurrection Year and the Making of Us in particular. But one of those messages has been, we don't fit in. Might be a single person and they didn't get the husband or the wife, let alone the children. And so it's hard to fit in. We haven't got the kids. Everybody around us, our families, our siblings, our friends, they've all got the kids. And so for a period of time, it feels like you really are ostracized. I remember times when Merryn and I would, go around to a friend's house and, there'd be 2 other friends there, just had newborns, and the whole afternoon is taken with that topic. And you just feel incredibly alienated. So that can happen even with good friends. And so that was very much in my mind when about 3 years ago, I went on a retreat. I was approaching a major birthday, and Laura, I know you can't believe that I have crossed the 50 mark.
No one's getting older.
I'm not at all. I'm 37 forever. And I was really praying through what the next season of life might look like. And I asked this one question. It's a really good question to ask if you go on retreat, to kind of get clarity on your life. What one big problem in the world would I love to have a chance at scratching? I may not solve it. I may not be the answer to it. But one big problem in the world, could I at least have a go at solving? And the thing that came very heavily for me that afternoon was friendlessness, because I'd heard from the readers that they struggled in this area. And I knew just a little bit about the loneliness figures that were around. I didn't know the friendless figures, which are related but slightly different. 25% of Australians have no one to talk to or turn to.
Wow.
That came out of Swinburne University just last year. About 30% of Australians are regularly lonely. And those figures are echoed in the UK, in the United States, across much of the Western world. In fact, the Gallup organisation recently surveyed 140 countries and found 25% of the world is lonely.
Goodness, yeah.
So we've got a big problem. And so that's what has led and fed into the streams that have fed into, I guess, the sea of Friendship Lab.
And you picked a good problem to try to help solve, because that's going to keep you busy, right? Like
it's a big problem.
It's clearly something affecting a lot of people. And at the core of friendships is a level of authenticity, an ability to be comfortable sharing the truth of what you're going through. How did you and Merryn, or what did you do, I guess, to come to a place where you thought, we're comfortable sharing our story, we can do this? Because there's a lot of people, as you say, that are silently sitting with this pain and many other pains as well.
Well, this may well be where writing a book can be helpful, even if you don't publish it. There is something in taking your experiences, journaling them down, and I actually had 10 years of journals to draw from. So this is why, probably even said it in one of your interviews with me before, Laura, the importance of journaling. I just find a journal is one of the most important spiritual tools that you can have. You don't have to do it every day. Just record the highs, the lows, the questions, and the discoveries that you make. And going through those 10 years, pulling the story back together, which meant that sometimes Merryn was coming home and finding me in a really bad place because I was going through a dark time in the journals. Other times she was finding me really high because we were in a good point. But pulling that together, and when you do that, you find that certain dots start to connect in the story, and you go, that actually ultimately led to that. And that decision ultimately led to that and that and that. And you can't see it until you kind of take the big picture and see those dots connecting. So there was a process in which we were pulling the story back together and then mining it for the lessons that it had. So once you've gotten to that stage, it's almost like you're ready then to share those lessons with other people. Having said that, Merryn would be the first person, if she was sitting here on the second mic, and say that in the end you just simply have to take a deep breath and jump off the cliff, because it is very difficult. We had a US TV program come and do a documentary on us. They come and spent 5 days with us, and at the end of that 5 days, Merryn said, "Okay, that's done. I've shared the story in the book, and now with the documentary, that's all your media credits used up."
Yeah, I mean, you're the broadcaster, you're the writer, you're kind of perhaps a little bit more comfortable with doing this, I would say.
That's right. Yeah, and I had to absolutely respect that, and I have to this day. I don't pull her into these kinds of conversations. She has done what she felt she could do. Important, isn't it? You have your boundaries. You have you realize what you can offer, and then you offer it to the world. And for some of us, you'll be able to offer it a few more times. Others, that will be your gift to the world, and that's absolutely fine.
Does the desire to be a dad ever go away?
Just on this trip, I have stayed with 2 beautiful Christian families. And one of those afternoons was, mum, dad, who are my friends, Steve and Louise, and their 3 wonderful, wonderful kids. And then Steve's parents came round. Wonderful Christian seniors who have, invested prayer and time and everything into. It's those moments that you realize what you don't have. It's those moments where you go, this is what we don't have. There are other times in which, and the majority of times, we're actually, because we've done that grieving process, it's not a live issue for us anymore. And because God has taken our story and by his own cleverness used it to help so many other people, you get a lot of joy out of that. You just get a lot of joy and satisfaction out of that. So it's not a replacement, but it certainly is. You're not left with nothing. You are left with the redemptive cleverness of God to take what you've gone through and help other people. And ultimately, what's the calling of the Christian? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbour as yourself. And if, you can live those 2 things out, then that's where contentment is found. That's where fulfillment is found. It's difficult, but when you can see that happening, it helps to ease those moments where you realise what you just don't have.
There's a kind of connection to almost a bigger picture. And I think too, in you sharing your story, the way that it's going to relate to each of us listening is going to be a little bit different. But I think there's a core truth in there of a heart's desire that is not met in the way that you expect it to. And maybe as it relates to becoming a family, even for those who aren't married and want to be, do you think some of it's not just about our own core desire, but maybe has society put like this undue level of attachment on what it means to be a sort of quote unquote real man or real woman, on being a parent, having a family? Like, do we attach too much of our identity in something in a way that maybe isn't healthy?
Right. Do we have 3 hours for this podcast? Because we're gonna need it. There's so much there. Yeah, there's 2 primary ways that we identify ourselves as Westerners. Number 1 is our parental status, and number 2 is our vocation. So what do you do? Who are you? Oh, my name is Denise. I'm a mother of 3, and I'm a graphic designer by trade. That's the way we kind of answer it. My name is David. I work as an engineer, and I've got 4 beautiful kids. So it's those 2 things. Now, what happens if you don't get either of those? What happens if you don't get the kids? You don't even get the spouse, and maybe stuck in a career you don't really like, but you're doing it to pay the bills. That's when we have the identity crisis. Great thing is that we have an opportunity to have an identity that's bigger than that, and that is being children of God, which is just a profound lesson. So the pressure really is there to achieve in one of those two areas. Otherwise, we feel like we don't have a self. We don't have a sense in which we are somebody important and special. Actually, just the fact that we exist and we're made in the image of God and we're uniquely reflective of the image of God in our own special ways, that's the basis for an incredible sense of value and an identity. But the pressure is very much there. And the one thing that's quite profound about this book, Praying Through Infertility, is that by getting a variety of people from different cultures to contribute, you find them tackling that issue in particular that you've raised in different ways. So there's a couple in the book that are from Zimbabwe, and they will talk about not just the pressure from their culture to be parents, the stigma if you are not. And so for both of them, they talk about the fact that there is a sense in which, both in their general culture and in their church circles, that you are potentially cursed by God, or there is some sort of hidden sin that is stopping you. And one of them bring out in this very powerful chapter about the fact that you've got John the Baptist's parents, Zechariah and Elizabeth, and how it says that they were righteous in the sight of God, yet they had no children. Now, I had always missed that verse. I'd never seen that. But that was a lifeline to them in that situation, because it said even without kids, now they went on to have John the Baptist, but before that, without kids, they were righteous in the sight of God. Now, what a wonderful biblical challenge to this horrible cultural and sometimes church-wide idea that if you don't have kids, somehow you're cursed. So yes, it happens, and not just in Western culture, a variety of other cultures too.
And the faith side of things is obviously something you have found such a deep sense of hope in, and it's been a real anchor point for you, something that has helped you navigate this journey and give meaning to so many parts of it. But I think too, the faith part can be kind of difficult because you have a belief in a God who is good. You have a belief in a God who has a plan and a purpose for you, and he knows it, that has come that we can have life and life abundantly, all of this sort of stuff.
Tick.
So then how do you wrestle and I guess reconcile that belief in a God that is good with these situations that can feel so bad? Like, surely faith has to make it a little bit harder sometimes too.
Definitely. It certainly muddies the waters at times. Sometimes almost envy secular people because they don't have to wrestle with this layer of it, right? Now, then I play my own little thought games and I think, boy, I'd hate to be a secular person in this because you've got no hope at all. I was just speaking on this trip. I was just speaking up at the University of Newcastle, speaking to 850 educators and their staff. An amazing moment. And I was saying, never forget that you are a child of God. I walked out to the car park. Somebody had put up a sticker on the car park that said, never forget this, you are an animal. Now, doesn't that contrast the two basic worldviews? One is naturalism that says you've just evolved from nothing, you're ultimately slime, you're just an animal, never forget it, to the supernatural one, the one of the Christian faith that actually says, no, you've been made with a purpose. You've been made to an image, you're an image bearer of God, whether you believe or you don't believe. And therefore you have dignity, you have purpose, you have value, you have hope. There is the two great contrasts. And yet when we find that then kind of quote-unquote God isn't coming through or quote-unquote prayer isn't working, that's when the crisis hits. And we've got to learn some big questions and learn some big answers and big solutions through those kinds of moments. And part of it is that sometimes we've been discipled more by Walt Disney than we have by the scriptures. And so we are used to the wonderful bow being tied at the end of the story and Prince Charming coming along and there's the wonderful Hollywood ending. Sometimes in this life we won't get that, and we have to wrestle with that. And sometimes the ending is a good one, right? It's good to have kids. That's a good thing. That's a good God-given thing. But some of us don't get them, and that's just not the way it should be, but it's the way it is for some people. And also in the midst of this, it's confronting consumerism that says not only should I have that, I should have it very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I can download and binge watch all these things, and so I'm just used to pressing a button, I get what I want. So there's a sense in which our spirituality has to grow. But the other thing, of course, with all of this is that we have to learn that the ultimate, joy in life, contentment in life is found in a relationship with God, and going in deep with that so that it's able to be the foundation of which all these other things can be built on. Most of us build our lives on the foundation of all the things that we want coming into our and then we thank God for them. But actually, if God's the foundation, all the other things are extra, well, that's a different scenario.
And in the Christian life as well, in the way that we do things, Scripture talks about do everything unto the glory of God, whether that's our eating, our drinking, our working, etc. My paraphrase of the Scripture, of
Pretty
course.
good one.
But that want to glorify God in the choices that we make, I think also adds complexity to this experience, whether it is the experience of praying through infertility, whether you're praying through unwanted singleness, as you mentioned earlier, where you've got people who the idea of glorifying God is meant to be about pressing on, continuing, like trusting him for that kind of divine meet cute. Don't go online dating. Don't do all these things because it's meant to just be in God's hands, and glorifying him looks like waiting for that divine influence on your day-to-day.
Yep.
In the context of infertility, to glorify God would be don't try IVF, like not my words, but this could be a perspective. Don't try IVF, don't adopt, don't whatever. Like to glorify God means sit and trust and conceive naturally. How have you approached that wrestle of what it means to glorify God in your journey through infertility alongside those other sort of things where it's like, does glorifying God mean adoption? Does it mean IVF? Does it mean letting it go?
Great question. Yeah, and I've heard from so many people who have had people say to them, you aren't glorifying God if you go and try these natural means, or you try IVF or everything like that. So you're right on the money there. And yes, you'll only glorify God if you have the great ending, the great miraculous ending. The Gospel of John, if you go and do a little study on what glorifying God actually means, ultimately for the Gospel of John, for the writer, for John the Apostle, the glory of God happens at the cross. Ouch. That's going to mess up a bit of our theology, isn't it? Yeah. If God is most glorified on the cross when Jesus then sacrificed himself for us so that our sins could be forgiven, so that all the powers of hell can be extinguished, and he then rose again. If that's how God is most glorified, well, that's going to change all of our theologies of what you've just been talking about. It means that actually suffering could well be part of glorifying God. It means that indeed resurrection is going to happen at some stage. But of course, resurrection's a little bit different to a miracle, isn't it? Jesus never actually avoided the cross. He went through it and then resurrection happened. It's not like some of the people like the leper that he healed. They didn't have to die and then come back to life again. He healed them right. Slight difference there. All of it glorifies God. What does glorifying God mean? It means revealing something of his nature and his character. And so you can do that in pursuing fostering and adoption. You can do that in choosing not to do any other means and waiting on God if that's what you feel he's calling you to do. I believe some people may well be called to do that. We weren't. You can glorify God through all of those wrestlings and even shaking your fist at God when you're still actually staying in contact with him. You read the Jewish scriptures. Gosh, boy, they're Habakkuk and Jeremiah, they're shaking their fist at God. But still they're staying in the room with him, and God is being glorified through all of this, through the providence of the way he's bringing these stories to their own important, individual, unique conclusions. But primarily it's how we reflect God's character. That is what it means to glorify God, which is why the cross was just so profound. It reflected the very sacrificial, merciful, graceful character of God.
It's a complex thing, and everyone's going to work it out in their own ways, I think, what that means. And there's one of the contributors, Catherine Gantlett, she has a beautiful contribution where she speaks about not pausing, not waiting to live your life while you're in that time of question, where in that sort of defined exile of sorts, where you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. You don't know what it's going to look like, whether the baby's going to come, whether the baby's not, but not to pause. What does that mean for you, the application of not waiting to live while also being in a time of wondering what God is going to do next?
That's why it was important to have so many contributors to this Praying Through Infertility book, because Catherine brought a little message there that I could have well done with hearing during our 10-year journey through infertility. The amount of times where you have to put your life on hold. When we were going through fostering and adoption, which we invested nearly 3 years in, you felt like your life was on hold because any moment the phone call could theoretically come and pick up your little boy or your little girl. So going on holidays, oh, well, if we were to have the phone call, we'd have to cancel the holidays and then come back home. So all of that time, you are constantly putting your life on hold. And I think Catherine's really important message there is that don't put your life completely on hold because, as happened with us, the phone call never came. And there was a whole heap of life that we missed out on as a result of that. Don't think about the new job opportunity. Don't. So often it's about don't relate to other people. Don't invest in friendships because we might be moving. All of those things. And we've had that at other times in our life where we felt, hang on a sec, we're disengaging from everybody around us and life around us that we're in because of this potential thing may well happen. Actually, it may not. And even if it does, you can work around it. So it's an important message. Keep on living life in the midst of your waiting.
It's so annoying though, Sheridan, because I think too, all of us have this in ways where there's something that you're hoping for and that matters, to keep hope, to hold on to hope. But then there's also a time where you obviously have to get to acceptance, right? Where you've got to be able to say, I don't think this is going to happen. And so you have to accept the reality of it not happening and how unhealthy it can be to still cling on to hope in some respects.
Yeah.
It's not an easy question to answer, I know, but how do we know? How does someone know when it's time to end the wait themselves?
How I wish I had an answer to that question, because we could have done with that answer, when we were going through our 10 years. It's very, very difficult. And, you talk about that weight of hope. I mean, Proverbs 13:12, hope deferred makes the heart sick. So it's something in which we probably have all tasted. For Merryn and I, the only way we could get to an answer for that for us was that our journey during that 10 years, we had ultimately tried everything that we felt comfortable doing. So we worked out a way that we felt was ethically okay to do IVF. We would make sure that no embryos were ever discarded. We would implant every embryo that was resulting from the process, all of those kinds of things. Now, other people look at IVF and really don't feel they can go there ethically. That's absolutely fine. That's how we did it. We looked at fostering and adoption. Real challenges with fostering and adoption. Overseas adoption was a real option at the time. There are big questions all about that, about taking a child out of their culture. How do you connect them back? How do you stay in touch with their birth parents? Is there a way in which you can do that? If you don't, sometimes there's big identity questions for the child. Same thing here. How are you going to stay in contact with the family so that the little boy, little girl knows where their nose came from, knows where the colour of their hair comes from? All the really important things as we grow older. So we wrestled with all that. We thought we could do that. We felt we could do this. We didn't feel we could do this or this or this. And so by the end of 10 years of trying all of those things, we were exhausted and felt like, now we've got to move on. Otherwise, this will never end. So for us, it was a very unspiritual thing. It was just simply we were tired and we felt that we had exhausted all our options. And now it was time to draw the line in the sand, cross over it, and move into our new life. But there's a related question to what you're asking, Laura. And the related question is, could I make the wrong decision? And that's more of the question, actually, it's behind it. If I draw the line in the sand too early, was it just a day away in which we were going to have the phone call for the little boy or little girl? Was it the next embryo with the next round that was going to work? That kind of teasing will pick your soul apart very, very quickly. You have to actually say, all right, we've come to the end of our journey as much as we understand it. We're going to hand this over to God, and unless he intervenes and says something else, we're going to move on in a different direction. Just say we made the quote unquote wrong decision. You know what? Do you think God's big enough to actually push us back onto the path in the next year or two? I think he is. And I think that it applies to all of the issues that we could be addressing today with our audience. And you're really worried about drawing a line and saying, okay, I'm going to now move into acceptance. It's not going to happen. Don't listen to those voices who say, oh, it's only unless you hold on in faith you're going to get it. No. Again, look at the cross. It's difficulty and then the grace of God that comes in and brings the answer in the end.
It's almost like we think of ourselves as being too in charge, like to think that our choice one way or the other could ultimately affect God intervening or affect him bringing things together or whatever it might look like. I think we can let that pressure off a bit,
Right.
you know, just as much as you're not God and you unable to make yourself conceive in a situation where you want to, pretty sure you're also not God and you can't prevent God intervening if that is what he intends to do.
Right. Very good. Summarize that. He's God, we're not.
A way to look at it. And Sheridan, I want to point out as we wrap it up, I mean, there's so many things we can talk about, but in hearing you talk just now, it reminded me of something that Dorcas Berry said. Her and her husband Tim were contributors in this, and she spoke about sometimes the need to relabel, you know, that it's the way we look at our situation that can be a challenge. And she pulls from the book of Job, where instead of looking at infertility, in her case, the way she was filtering Job's story was that he saw things not as problems, but started to see it as mysteries. And so she was able to say, my infertility, yes, I've looked at it as a problem, but if I consider it to be a mystery, just something that I don't understand, and it's part of the nature of God and this world we live in that I don't understand, that almost gave her a better ability to accept it. Do you feel an affinity with that idea of relabeling problems into mysteries?
I think that's one of the best articles that have been published in the book. And Dorcas is no public speaker, no writer or anything like that. She's got lessons to share, and she shares them in Praying Through Infertility. Because she then draws the fact that Job was able to, you know, we read the book of Job, he has so many questions. God, why is this happening to me? I've done nothing wrong. And then he's wrestling with his friends, quote unquote, his friends who are saying, well, you must have some secret sin in your life or something like that. All the things that we hear about today so often. And then he has this encounter with God, and he just has this incredible front row seat to this kind of tour of the universe where God says, were you there when I did this and made the goats and made the heavens and the earth? And were you there? And at the end, he doesn't need to have answers. He's got God. And so he's able to have all those mysteries held in the hands of God. And so with Dorcas then saying, yeah, if I was to reframe this, not so much as a problem, but actually as a mystery that I can hand back into the hands of God, I can live with this. I think it's a profound lesson that she shared.
Sheridan, thank you so much for collating such a beautiful collection of stories of scriptures, and also for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.
Sheridan certainly shares his story with such grace, and the tenderness of somebody you know has felt the very things that he's speaking about and encouraging others with. The 90-day devotional, Praying Through Infertility, it is out now, and I do have a copy for one undistracted listener. If you'd like that to be you can email me, undistracted@hope1032.com.au. And until next time, enjoy living this undistracted life.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.